Hey guys, it's Sebastian from AskSebby, and today we are going to look at some deals and news that you want to know about related to travel, credit cards, and points. Before we dive in though, a big favor is to give this a thumbs up. If you do that, I will try to minimize my usage of S in sentences. I've been pretty good about getting rid of my ums and my ahs, but I still use S as a crutch, so give it a thumbs up. We'll start off with some deals first, so this is going to be the lightning round, and then we'll talk about some pretty big changes to the Marriott point program. If you are someone with Marriott points, then that section is going to be very important and some actions that you might want to take in the next few weeks. And then finally, we'll talk about some changes. Actually, we'll also cover some Hyatt stuff that is news from a few months ago, but that's still relevant given this Marriott change. And then finally, we'll talk about changes to the Capital One Venture Card and whether they're good or bad for you. With that said though, let's dive into the lightning round. The first one is if you are someone who has American Express cards, ones that earn MR points, so these are membership reward points, Amazon does have a new promotion going on where when you spend $100 on goods sold by Amazon.com, you can get $40 off when you use any MR point amounts. The optimal strategy being to use exactly 1 points. For me, I ended up buying a knife for Mother's Day that I knew that my mom wanted since she hinted at it, and the fact that it was on sale because the normal price is $200. It's still an expensive knife, so it's not going to be for everyone. I'll link it down below in case anyone cares about that, but the more important link is going to be the one that activates that code and gets you that $40 off. That is all going to be down below as well as in the blog post if you're someone who wants a summary of everything that we talk about. Number 2 is that we're seeing an increased offer for the JetBlue Plus card. So the normal offer is 40,000 points, and right now it's going to be 60,000 points for $1,000 a minimum spend within the first 3 months. So pretty much a 20,000 point increase, which isn't too bad at all. We do see this offer come around pretty frequently. I feel like we've seen it probably about 2 or 3 times a year. So if you are someone who's under 524, I'd circle back to this card. Reminder though that there is a soft 624 rule with Barclays, so something to be careful with. It's not a hard cap though, so unlike Chase, if you are someone who's 724 or 824, you still have the ability to get approved, but it's going to be a bit harder. JetBlue points are worth about 1.5 cents per point, so 60,000 points is going to be about $900 in value. This is going to be a fixed points program similar to Southwest, if you're familiar with that. So if you are someone who is trying to get outsized value, then it's a bit harder, but it is pretty good if you are someone who likes to fly economy. 60,000 points, $900 compared to the normal 40,000 point offer, so about $600 in value. If you apply, it's an increased $300 gain relative to the normal offer, but obviously you still need to spend money, but I think it's a very high return on spend card that probably makes sense for a lot of people. If you want more information to that card, as well as some other additional analysis and things that you might want to know about, it's going to be in the blog post down below, should be the first or second link in the description box. Number 3 is something I talked about over on Instagram. If you are someone doing the merry-go-round of status matching with Wyndham as well as Caesars, now is the time to match back over to Caesars. So last month you were supposed to match your Caesars back to Wyndham to get Wyndham Diamond status, and now you're matching back with that Wyndham to Caesars since you just lost status on February 1st. If you're confused what I'm talking about, I've talked about this topic a few times in prior videos, going pretty detailed about it, but you're pretty much doing a loop-to-loop status match based off different expiration dates of these programs. If you want to make sure that you don't miss out on random small deals and reminders with stuff like this, I'd recommend following our Instagram, AskSebby, where I end up talking about more of this type of stuff. Mostly stuff that's more time-based and might not scale long-term. So that's the lightning round. It was still probably a bit longer than I would have liked, but I ended up talking a bit more than normal. Next, we're going to talk about the Marriott stuff, which is pretty important, as well as some Hyatt news, which is related, and also the Capital One changes, which are very substantial. So with Marriott, the big thing that we are seeing is that they're changing their categories for their properties. This is something that we normally see, but the main problem, I'm not sure how to put this, but normally they're a bit more fair about it. And right now, it seems like they're just increasing the price for a lot of their hotels. So in the past, at least they give off the facade that, oh, some of these hotels are getting more expensive, so they're going from category 4 to category 5, but there's also a bunch that are dropping back down. Right now, we're seeing pretty much all of them just go up. There are some that are going down, but it doesn't really feel that way. So if you are someone who is in that mid-level who's looking for economic stays, then I would recommend booking your stays as soon as possible before those new pricing charts come into play. If I did have to be very general about it, I think people who are in the middle area who are doing those economic stays are kind of getting screwed, and it makes these Marriott points, these Bonvoy points, a lot less valuable. And if you're someone who's doing aspirational stuff, arguably you're not really affected because these were already category 8s. They already costed the most amount of points anyways, and they're not going up. I guess there is an argument that if there are more people in the middle who are no longer looking to do those economic stays and now they're looking to do these aspirational stays, that availability might end up becoming an issue. But yeah, I think you're not really too affected. You're kind of sheltered on that aspirational side. I actually think this ends up fundamentally changing how Marriott points should be considered. A lot of people saw it as a very useful currency for a lot of different situations. If you look at something like IHG points, they really work well towards the high ends. Hyatt points are still very universal. And then Hilton points can kind of be a mix, but I would argue those are more aspirational as well. You can still get value if you don't want to do those type of stays, but it's going to be a lot harder and it's more sweet spot dependent. And there's also an interesting play if you want to transfer the points to some airline partners. The transfer rate isn't really as competitive as I would like, but I think if you're looking for certain currencies that don't have transfer partners or that are a lot harder to get, then it's still an interesting path. The most obvious ones to me are going to be JAL, so Japan Airlines, as well as Alaska Airlines, just because their points end up doing very well for aspirational stuff as well. Not hating on them, but just be careful if you are someone who wants to do normal travel. So how does all of this relate to Hyatt? So there were a few changes over with the Hyatt program a few months ago that I forgot to cover. I technically knew about it, but it didn't really seem like it fit with any of the videos. Their main thing is that they started enacting dynamic pricing, meaning that prices aren't going to be fixed. The main benefit though is that the prices aren't going to be too bad. So for the top end for these 40,000 point per night properties, you're looking at between 35,000, 40,000, and 45,000 points for your stay. If you compare this with another program such as Marriott, you see that their reward chart is 70,000 points, 85,000 points, and 100,000 points for their top level hotels. Factor in that the transfer rate for Chase to both Marriott as well as Hyatt is going to be 1-to-1. You can see why the Hyatt change isn't really too bad to me. So let's say you had 100,000 Chase points, that could either equal 100,000 Marriott points, so Bonvoy points, or 100,000 Hyatt points. In the absolute worst case, 100,000 Marriott Bonvoy points, that's going to redeem for one night at their most expensive hotels. So for example, St. Regis in Bora Bora. Really cool hotel, but that's definitely a lot of points, especially when a lot of people who recently went ended up booking when it was 60,000 points. On the flip side for Hyatt, you transferred over those same 100,000 points, that's 100,000 Hyatt points. That gets you 2 nights at their top level hotels, and you still have 10,000 points left over, and this is in the absolute worst case if it's 45,000 points. I've said this once, I've said this a lot of times, I think the Hyatt program is one of the most underrated ones for normal people looking to do normal travel who just want to save additional money. For anyone who's still here, a big favor is to give this a thumbs up and to let me know down below if you actually like seeing stuff like this or if you just prefer only analyzing cards. I know some people who are like, I don't care about this news, this isn't relevant for me, I'm only after cash back, I don't care how these points scale. And then for other people, this ends up being pretty important because it affects their metagame, it affects the strategies that they want to take. Speaking of hotel changes, a pretty big one is the Capital One venture where they ended their partnership with Hotels.com. So in the past, they had a partnership where you ended up earning 10x points when you booked using that card on Hotels.com, and that was arguably one of the most overpowered cards. I would consider that like an S tier card, so the top of the top and a bit overpowered. Right now, they did add some other benefits to make up for it, but I don't really think it's as competitive. We'll run through all the changes and I'll talk about why I think it's going from an S to probably an A or a B. They ended up replacing the Hotels.com partnership with Accor Hotels as well as Wyndham. They also have better transfer rates for JetBlue, but we'll talk about why a lot of these don't really matter. With Accor Hotels, when you look at how the points can be used, it's not really as competitive as you would like. The Capital One venture points transfer over at a pretty low rate, at a 2-to-1 rate, and then once you have those Accor points, then you can redeem that towards cash for your stays. So 2,000 points is going to be worth 40 euro. So on the surface, that sounds pretty good. You're getting 2 cents per point effectively for those Accor points. The problem though is that the fact that you're transferring these means that you're effectively only getting 1 cent per point on your Capital One points. I'll put up the math on the screen, and if you're confused, I'd recommend pausing. So 20,000 points for about $200 in value is only really about 1 cent per point, which I don't really think is that interesting. Be aware that Capital One typically does have these promotions where they increase the value of the points, but until we see that, I'm not too excited yet. I like Accor hotels. I think they have some pretty cool hotels in their system, such as Fairmont ones. I also went to one in Banana Hills with Mandy a while ago. It's kind of like an adult amusement park. I'll put maybe 5 or 10 seconds of footage up. Good morning, gamers. Wyndham is kind of the same situation because they increased the price of a lot of their hotels, so the points are no longer as valuable. There's probably still going to be some sweet spots. To me, at least, Wyndham points aren't really the most valuable. JetBlue points are relatively fixed at about 1.5 cents per point, so factor in that transfer rate and you're getting a bit of value, but it's not really enough. Again, I'll put up the math on the screen for this, but you're effectively getting 1.15 cents per point, which is fine, but it's just not exciting. It's not outsized value. With that said, I think the card is still worth considering, especially if you're in the mid-game and you want to try this card if you're looking for an intro bonus, just because you have a very good intro bonus with reasonable minimum spend, a reasonable annual fee, and you also have a downgrade path into a no annual fee card. You don't have that 10x for Hotels.com, but you still have access to transfer partners to these other programs where you can get outsized value. At a minimum, for most people, you're still probably looking at about $500 in value for $3,000 in minimum spend within 3 months of using the card and getting the card. To me, at least, that's not too bad at all, and I wouldn't recommend leaving money on the table. On that note, if you are someone interested in learning about that Capital One card or pretty much any other card, a very easy way to support our channel would be to use the links that are on our website, AskSebby.com, as well as down below in the description box. Make sure those offers are competitive to ones that you can find elsewhere, but it really does support the channel. My question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on everything that we just talked about? So the Lightning offers, Marriott, Hyatt, as well as the new Capital One changes. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you know anyone else who'd benefit from what we just talked about, share this with them. It'd probably help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.